First contact, first mistake. The Jarl coalition had conquered 27 systems without ever setting foot on soil. War, to them, was a matter of clean lines and distant certainty, orbital superiority, signal disruption, precision strikes delivered from beyond atmosphere. Worlds surrendered after their infrastructure collapsed, not after blood soaked the ground. It was efficient, civilized. So when the long-range probes returned from the Sol-adjacent frontier world labeled H-317, the Coalition's Command Council barely glanced at the biological reports. Bipedal species, moderate intelligence, fragile physiology, emotional bonding behaviors flagged as excessive. The only anomaly was a secondary life form frequently observed beside the humans. Four-limbed, fur-covered, predatory by ancestry, yet docile in proximity to their masters. Companion animals, the analysts concluded. Non-combatants. The Coalition invasion fleet arrived in orbit without resistance. Human satellites went dark under a soft electromagnetic sweep. Communication arrays collapsed in neat silence. No counterfire followed. No fleets rose to meet them. General Varesh, commander of the expeditionary force, permitted himself a ripple of satisfaction. Primitive, he said, watching the planet rotate beneath the viewport. They rely on proximity and emotion. They will fracture quickly. Landing zones were chosen in forested regions near human settlements. Areas Coalition doctrine labeled low threat. Drones descended first, scanning for weapon emplacements, heat signatures, anything resembling organized defense. They found very little. The forests were quiet. Too quiet, perhaps, but the sensors showed no mass forces, no mechanized armor, no energy shields. The humans had abandoned the outskirts entirely. Ground teams deployed shortly after. Varesh observed the feeds as armored Jarl infantry advanced through alien undergrowth, their exosuits whispering over damp soil. The atmosphere was breathable, gravity tolerable. By all metrics, this should have been an effortless occupation. Then the first scout team stopped responding. No distress call, no weapons discharge. Their telemetry simply vanished. Varesh's frill tightened. Interference. Negative, a technician replied. No jamming detected. A second team was dispatched along the same vector, instructed to move cautiously. Their helmet cams showed broken foliage, disturbed earth, signs of retreat. Human footprints. Equipment dropped deliberately. A tactic, then? A bait. Varesh clicked his mandibles in irritation. They're attempting to lure us into pursuit. Increase drone coverage. Moments later, the second team's feed dissolved into static. Still no weapons fire. Something about that unsettled him. Hours passed. Night fell across the forest. Thermal scans flickered with false positives, small, fast-moving heat signatures that vanished before drones could lock on. Motion sensors triggered and reset without visible cause. And then the sounds began. Low, distant, a rolling chorus that rose and fell like wind through stone corridors. The technicians hesitated before adjusting the audio filters. What emerged was unmistakable. Howling. Varesh's translator struggled, cycling through databases. The sound did not match any known Jarl predator. It was layered, coordinated, carrying intent. Explain, Varesh demanded. A junior xenobiologist answered, voice tight. The companion species. The quadrupeds. Earth designation. Canis familiaris. Animals, Varesh snapped. Irrelevant. Before the xenobiologist could respond, a new feed opened. A surviving scout stumbled into view, armor gouged, breathing ragged. The camera shook as he ran, glancing over his shoulder again and again. There's something following us, the scout hissed. We can't see it, but it knows where we are. It always knows. A shape burst from the darkness. Not large, not armored, but fast beyond calculation. The feed cut out as the scout screamed. Silence returned to the command deck, thick and unwelcome. Varesh stared at the darkened screen, unease threading through his certainty. Deploy countermeasures. Flood the area with drones. They're already gone, a technician said quietly. All of them. Varesh turned back to the planetary display, watching clouds drift lazily over green continents. On the surface, kilometers from the landing zone, a human officer crouched beside a line of armored figures. At his side, shapes moved in disciplined silence, muscle and fur, eyes reflecting faint light, noses lifted to the air. He tapped his communicator once. "Trackers released," he said calmly. They took the bait. The dogs surged forward as one, vanishing into the forest. Behind them, humanity waited, the ones who follow forever. Lieutenant Mara Kincaid learned early never to think of the dogs as equipment. Equipment could be replaced. Equipment could be powered down, recalibrated, sacrificed for efficiency. The dogs didn't fit any of those categories. They were partners, living, thinking beings who chose to follow her into places logic said no one should go. She lay prone on a ridge overlooking the valley, her rifle untouched beside her, one gloved hand resting lightly on the shoulders of Rook, a black-coated tracker bred for endurance over strength. His ears twitched, nose sampling the air in slow, deliberate pulls. He wasn't listening. He was reading the world. "Easy," Mara murmured, not because Rook needed calming, but because ritual mattered. "Fine." Rook surged forward without a sound. Below them, the Jarl advance unit moved with mechanical precision, confident now that their drones filled the air. Heat-masking fields shimmered faintly around their armor, blurring their outlines on human sensors. To Coalition doctrine, they were ghosts. To Rook, they were beacons. The aliens bled chemistry into the world with every breath. Trace oils from their armor seals, unfamiliar proteins shed through stress, the sharp metallic tang of fear they didn't know they emitted. The rain that had fallen earlier only helped, pressing those signatures deeper into bark and soil. Rook followed a trail no machine could see. Mara tracked him through the shared tactical feed, watching his icon glide through the terrain with unnerving certainty. He never hesitated, never doubled back. When the trail crossed rock or shallow water, he slowed just enough to reconstruct the path, then accelerated again. She'd seen this before, against human insurgents, against synthetic infiltrators that thought they were invisible. The pattern was always the same. Nothing escaped for long. The Jarl commander at the rear of the column sensed something wrong before any alarm sounded. He paused, lifting a clawed hand, frill tightening as an unease he had no name for crept up his spine. "Hold," he ordered. "Increase rear security." Too late. A shadow moved at the edge of the tree-line. Too low to be a human, too fast to be a machine. Weapons swung, firing blind into the undergrowth. Plasma scorched leaves and trunks, but the shape was already gone. The commander's hearts began to race. "Contact," he demanded. "Negative," his soldiers replied, confusion bleeding into their voices. "No target lock." Then the growl rolled through the forest. It wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. It vibrated through armor and bone alike, a sound that spoke of proximity and patience. More shapes appeared, brief flashes of movement, eyes catching light, forms circling just beyond sensor range. They weren't attacking. They were hurting. Mara watched from her ridge as the aliens tightened into a defensive cluster, weapons outward, backs nearly touching. That was when she knew the dogs had them. Panic always forced prey into predictable patterns. She keyed her calm. All handlers maintained distance. Let them work. Rook broke cover at last, not toward the center of the group, but to their flank, driving them where the scent told him they wanted to go least. Another dog appeared opposite him, pale-coated and massive, teeth flashing in a silent snarl. The aliens fired again, wild now, discipline cracking. One broke from formation. Rook was on him in 3 heartbeats. He didn't go for the throat. Training forbade it unless necessary. Instead, he hit the alien low, slamming into jointed armor, taking him to the ground. The alien screamed as claws flailed uselessly. By the time human soldiers moved in, the fight was already over. Mara reached Rook as he released his hold and backed away on command, chest heaving, eyes bright with focus rather than bloodlust. She knelt, pressing her forehead briefly to his. Good, she whispered. You did good. Elsewhere in the forest, it didn't end so cleanly. A Jarl scout hid beneath a fallen tree, armor powered down, breath shallow. He had been there for hours, unmoving, convinced he had finally escaped. Then he heard breathing that wasn't his own. The dog didn't bark, didn't growl. It sat above him, patient as stone, nose inches from the place where fear leaked into the soil. It would wait as long as it took. Back on the ridge, Mara watched new icons fade from the tactical map as one by one, the trackers found their marks. The coalition had thought war was about weapons and distance. They had forgotten something older. Some hunters never stopped following. No place to hide. By the third night, the Jarl coalition stopped pretending they controlled the ground. Their orbital command still claimed superiority, space lanes secured, human satellites disabled, but the surface told a different story. Patrol routes collapsed. Forward bases went dark without a single distress call. Units reported losses without ever confirming enemy contact. The forest had become hostile. General Varesh reviewed the reports in silence, his frill rigid with tension. Heat signatures vanished. Motion alarms triggered in empty corridors. Drones returned footage of nothing but swaying branches and drifting fog. And always, in the audio logs, the same detail appeared. Breathing, padding footsteps, low sounds just beneath the threshold of language. These creatures, Varesh said at last, they are not soldiers. No, the xenobiologist replied. They are trackers. The word carried a weight Varesh did not like. Countermeasures were ordered. Atmospheric dispersals flooded the region with chemical suppressants designed to neutralize biological detection. Terrain sterilizers burned wide swaths of forest to ash, leaving nothing organic behind. For a time, it seemed to work. Then the disappearances resumed. The dogs adapted with terrifying speed. Where scent failed, they read pressure in soil, disturbance in foliage, the subtle wrongness of a place something had passed through. They learned the rhythms of Jarl movement, the way their armor clicked under stress, the faint electrical whine of their shielding fields. Machines needed recalibration. Dogs learned. At Outpost Theta 9, the last operational surface base, coalition troops refused to patrol beyond the perimeter. They clustered beneath floodlights, weapons trained outward, flinching at every shadow. The howls came closer each night. Not as a pack. Never as a pack. Always just one. Then another. Spaced apart, surrounding. A young Jarl officer slammed his weapon against the wall in frustration. Why won't they attack? He cried. Why do they just watch us? Because fear softened prey. Because tired prey made mistakes. Varesh arrived at Theta 9 to reassert control, his presence a reminder of order. He addressed the garrison personally, voice steady, doctrine precise. You face animals, he told them. Predictable, bound by instinct. Hold your ground and they will break. Even as he spoke, alarms wailed. A perimeter sensor went dark. Then another. Cameras showed nothing but empty corridors, until something passed just close enough to smear the image into static. The lights flickered. Varesh felt it then, the deep certainty that no plan survived this kind of enemy. In the command bunker beneath the outpost, human handlers watched the feeds in silence. Lieutenant Kincaid stood among them, arms crossed, jaw tight. Dogs are in position, a sergeant reported. They've mapped the whole base. Mara nodded once. Then we wait. The dogs moved through vents and service tunnels too small for humans, guided by memory and scent and a bond that needed no words. They did not rush. They marked exits. They tracked every individual. When a human assault finally began, it was almost an afterthought. Explosive charges breached the outer walls, human infantry flowing in behind controlled shockwaves. But resistance was scattered, panicked. Jarl soldiers fired at shadows, at echoes, at ghosts. Those who ran found teeth in their path. Those who had found noses at their doors. Varesh fled deeper into the bunker as systems failed around him. He sealed himself into a command alcove, heart hammering, armor locking down. Minutes passed, then hours. He began to believe he might survive. A soft sound reached him through the bulkhead, scraping metal, slow and deliberate. Something pressed against the door, sniffing. Varesh froze. The panel buckled inward with a screech. Through the gap, a pair of eyes reflected the emergency lights, steady, intelligent, unafraid. The creature did not attack. It sat and waited. When human soldiers arrived, weapons raised, the dog stepped back obediently, mission complete. Varesh was taken alive. Later, as he was escorted from the ruins of Theta 9, he saw humans kneeling beside wounded dogs, hands gentle, voices low. He saw soldiers shield them with their own bodies as medics worked. Only then did he understand the truth. Humans did not command these predators. They walked beside them, and that made all the difference. Man's oldest ally. The ceasefire was signed in orbit, not because the Jarrell coalition had lost its fleets, but because it had lost the ground. General Varesh stood in a containment chamber aboard his flagship, restraints light but unmistakable. Across the table sat human representatives in unadorned uniforms, no ceremonial armor, no show of dominance. At their feet lay the reason the war had ended. A dog slept. Its flank rose and fell steadily, one ear twitching at distant sounds even in rest. Varesh found himself watching it more than the humans. "You could have annihilated our surface forces from orbit," Varesh said at last, struggling to keep accusation from his voice. "You chose not to. Why?" Admiral Reyes folded her hands. "Because orbit doesn't teach lessons. Survival does." Varesh's frill tightened. "You unleashed predators on us." Reyes shook her head once. "No, we let our partners do what they've always done." She gestured to the dog. "We didn't make them this way. We met them like this." After the ceasefire, Jarrell observers were permitted to witness human recovery operations on the surface. What they saw unsettled them more than the battles ever had. Human medics prioritized wounded dogs alongside soldiers, in some cases before soldiers. Handlers slept on cold ground rather than leave an injured animal alone. No one questioned it. Varesh watched from a guarded platform as Lieutenant Kincaid knelt beside her tracker, Rook carefully cleaning a shallow plasma burn along his shoulder. "You risked your species for them," Varesh said quietly. Mara didn't look up. "No," she replied. "I trusted them with my life." "That's different." She finished the bandage, resting her forehead briefly against Rook's. The dog leaned into her touch, eyes half-lidded, utterly at peace. Varesh struggled to reconcile the image with everything he knew of war. Among the coalition, animals were resources, tools, biological components to be engineered, deployed, and discarded. Emotional attachment was considered a flaw, an inefficiency that led to hesitation. Yet here, attachment had become a force multiplier beyond any technology. During the final diplomatic session, a Jarrell counselor asked the question that had haunted them since the first howls echoed through the forests. "Why?" the counselor demanded. "Did you bring these creatures into war?" The human response was immediate. "We didn't," Admiral Reyes said. "They followed us." She spoke of ancient times on Earth, of firelit camps and long migrations, of humans who were small and slow and frightened of the dark, of wolves who chose to walk closer instead of attacking. "We survived together," Reyes continued. "They warned us of danger. We fed them. We protected each other. Everything else came later." Varesh felt a chill ripple through his carapace. The war's final clause was added at human insistence. Formal recognition of human, canine units as sentient combat partners under interstellar law. The coalition agreed without debate. None of them wished to face that bond again. As the Jarrell fleet withdrew, human forces stood down. The forests grew quiet, the tension easing like a held breath finally released. On the surface, Mara walked the tree line with Rook at her side. No armor now, no rifle, just a woman and a dog moving through familiar ground. "You did good," she said again, voice soft. Rook wagged his tail once, then stopped, nose lifting briefly as if checking a trail only he could sense. Satisfied, he returned to her side. High above, alien observers watched the pair through magnification lenses. They saw no weapons, no visible threat. What they finally understood was this. Humanity's greatest weapon was not its fleets, its soldiers, or its technology. It was the fact that, when the darkness came, humans were never alone. And whatever hunted them in the night would first have to face the ones who had been guarding them since the beginning.